All right, great. Let me go back to sharing my screen one more time. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about some WordPress news and events. Things are picking up again. This time of year, summer is a little bit slow. One thing event that's happening right now is the Page Builder Summit. So it did start yesterday, but you're not too late. So you can sign up for this. So if you go to pagebuildersummit.com, and what this is it's free to register, and you can watch their pre-recorded sessions from this summit. It's quite a variety of topics. So even if you're not using a page builder like Divi or Elementor or it's Beaver Builder, etc., there's still a lot of topics in here I think that are of general interest. So definitely worth checking out. It's free. Can't beat the price. So pagebuildersummit.com. That's going on for a couple more days. Accessibility Day. This is what's driving today's topic. So WordPress Accessibility Day 2023 is coming up right around the corner, next week, right? So it's November 27th, 28th. So it's going to be a 24-hour virtual conference, but there's also live streaming. So I'll put the link in the chat once Peter's talking. So 2023.WordPress Accessibility Day. So there's a lot of topics and a lot of different speakers, and Peter being one of them. So Peter's going to be covering a little bit broader, and Peter, feel free, you can talk later about the difference between maybe what you're presenting versus what you're giving tonight. But I think for the sake of time tonight, we tried to have something a little bit shorter, I think, than what he's going to be covering there. So if you like tonight's topic, if you're more interested in other things around accessibility, I highly recommend you check this out. Again, free, can't beat that. And then just in terms of things that have happened recently, so August, I don't remember exactly, end of August, I think it was WordCamp US 2023, I believe in Maryland, if I'm not mistaken. I know it was somewhere on the East Coast. So usually for people who've never attended or don't know what a WordCamp is, it's, again, like a day of talks and presentations around different WordPress topics. So usually the WordCamp US is one of the biggest ones, just like WordCamp Europe. And one of the things that always comes out of that is some of the keynote presentations. So one of the founders of WordPress tends to give like a state of the word kind of a keynote address at the end of the year at these camps. So what I thought I'd do, just again, if you can certainly watch it too. The nice thing is that all of the videos from WordCamp US are on the WordPress YouTube channel. So again, go take a look at those. Some really great talks there. But just to kind of summarize, in case you don't have the time, here's things I pulled out of the keynotes for the future of WordPress. So just if people didn't know, WordPress turned 20 this year. There were a bunch of birthday celebrations for WordPress, virtual celebrations for it. So it's one of those products that definitely has stood the test of time. So the question is, where do you go from here? And some of the discussions from the keynote were, visions for the future. So one of the things I thought was interesting was around making WordPress itself more performant. So meaning, perform better. So reducing its overall energy consumption, for both devices and the environment. So just trying to make the code run better. You think about your website, what does that really mean? Well, probably doesn't mean a lot. Your website probably isn't consuming a lot of power in a server someplace, but think about all the, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of websites out there. So and WordPress still is one of the largest content management systems out there on the web. So think about just the impact that could have. So that's one of their visions for the future. Also, just more in general, making WordPress easier to use, learn, and discover, something we talk about here quite a bit. WordPress events, making them more meaningful, just having more focus, less waste, more value, more connections for people who attend those. And again, it's what I hope we provide as well, too, providing a safe, engaging, easy to find community. So that was kind of the vision thing. So really, what's next around WordPress? And this is probably more of the immediate, short, let's say, to midterm future of WordPress. This is around Gutenberg. So if people aren't familiar, that block editor in WordPress was formerly named, kind of codenamed Gutenberg, and the name is sort of stuck as much as they try to shake it off. So in terms of WordPress itself, they're still hoping to get out, to stick to this kind of cadence of 3 major releases planned for the year. And I believe we already had 6.3 last time we met. I think it had just come out. So WordPress 6.4 is already scheduled right now for November 7th. So coming in that, there's going to be another 2024 default theme, which tends to come out for these major releases. Some of the cool features that they've announced, one's this fonts management idea. So rather than, if you think about if you've used Google Fonts or if your theme uses Google Fonts, quite often it pulls in, the theme doesn't know necessarily what you're going to use. So sometimes it has references out to the Google font CDN, or the content delivery network. So sometimes you pull in more stuff than what you're actually using on your site. So the thought is having this really easy to use, simple fonts management tool where you can import the font files locally to your website. So again, kind of getting back to the idea of better performance, not having to make all those network calls out, just if you're using, let's say, 1 or 2 fonts. So that seemed like a neat thing that's coming in 6.4. And another one that just kind of shocks me it took this long to do, but for people who've used these plugins for things like creating a light box, there's so many plugins around for that. Guess what? They're finally building it into the image block. 20 years later, it's coming to WordPress. So just one of those, nice to have. You can maybe reduce the number of plugins you have just to do something fairly simple. And there's other features that are going to come that I'm sure will be announced before November 7th.
Yeah, Ray, there was one I was trying to use today and realized that it's only because it's in the Gutenberg plugin that you use to test, which is of all things in the list view, you can group things together and then you can rename that group in the list view to what that group of things is.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, that's going to make managing large, posts and things a heck of a lot easier because you'll be able to see a lot more.
That's great, yeah.
Yeah.
So as we're talking about Gutenberg / the block editor, it's really part of these phases of WordPress. So going back, I think it's really, as I was thinking about it, as Peter and I, as we planned to talk about these things, when we restarted this Hartford WordPress group, going on 5-ish years ago now, I think 5 years. Yeah, it's like she was there.
Judith was there from the beginning.
That was the beginning of what they called phase 1 of this, remodernization, if you will, of WordPress. So that was all around editing. That was the idea of Gutenberg / the block editor. People who've used WordPress a long time, the idea of you having a drag and drop type of way to build pages and posts, that's why people used page builders, because that was the only alternative. So as that got built into WordPress core, that was really phase 1, was building that out. And that took a while. Phase 1 actually lasted for quite a bit. Phase 2 was more around the idea of once you've got this block editor for pages and posts, why not extend it now to the rest of the site? Allow people to use that same idea for templates. So rather than having to know PHP and HTML, etc., it just use that same kind of concept to customize things like your headers, your footers, etc., etc. So that was phase 2. And phase 2 is kind of, from all intents and purposes, has been winding down in that last 6.3 release. It's not totally over, but it's really winding down this year. Well, what's coming up next, phase 3, is kind of exciting. It's this collaboration phase. I'll talk a little bit about more about that in the next slide. And then what's after that is multilingual. So that hasn't really been defined yet, but that's really coming up the next phase, phase 4, and there's really no set date on that. But phase 3 is really starting soon. It's kind of starting this year a bit. So what does collaboration mean? So if you use something like Google Docs before, it's really allowing multiple people in real time to edit pages and posts. So if you think about today, how many of us, if you're working on a site where there's another person working on it, how often have you gotten into a situation where you're trying to edit a page or post and says it's locked, so-and-so is working on it. You're like, hopefully you can get in contact with them and they'll get out of edit mode and all that, so you don't step on each other. Well, if you think about the web these days, that's most web applications don't work like that. They allow you to edit things and collaborate in real time. So that's one of the big things that's going to be coming up in this next phase. So that's really evolving WordPress from being a single user tool to a multi-user tool. So there's going to be a lot of changes under the hood to support that. But luckily, again, just as I said, the web is already there. If you think about things like, as I said, Google Docs, any other types of collaboration tools that you're using online, other people have solved this problem. So fortunately, WordPress can leverage that through browser technologies that already do, allow for things like that. One thing that's definitely long overdue is a WordPress admin. It really just looks still pretty old, and it works if you're used to it. But just if you think about after you have a certain number of plugins, the whole sidebar ends up looking pretty ugly with just tons of information, hard to navigate. So that's going to be looked at in terms of cleaning that up a bit. So that's something coming soon. And then workflows, I heard this wasn't totally defined. The way I understood it was more around, if you think about today, you have user roles in WordPress. You have the idea of like an editor, an admin person, et cetera, et cetera. So there is kind of some workflow built into WordPress, but it really was built around blogging. That was kind of where that workflow came from. So this is looking at it more holistically to say, okay, from a site management standpoint, what kind of workflows can we implement into WordPress for collaboration? And a couple of just, nuggets to this command palette. We talked about that in 6.3. That's the idea for kind of power users who want to do things with the keyboard and jump quickly to a function. Improving the media library, finally, that's another thing that's just hasn't been touched in quite a while, so making that work a little bit better. And then Openverse, for people who aren't aware that you can do a Google on that. That's a project where WordPress is trying to pull in open source, I should say, like royalty-free media into WordPress. So you don't have to go out to outside of your WordPress dashboard to find that kind of information. It's really integrating that better into WordPress itself. So that's it. That's the collaboration phase, and that's kind of it's exciting to see what that's going to look like, and that's starting soon. So hopefully next year we'll be talking more about collaboration tools and kind of what's coming into WordPress. So anyway, that was the kind of the keynotes that came out from WordCamp 2023. And now, Peter, do you have a tool or plugin thing, or do you want to just skip that today and jump into your thing?
I can do a quick one,
Okay.
only because it was appropriate to something that that's been in our Facebook group a little bit. So let me grab the screen and I'll show this real quick. Oops, wrong one. You see it?
Yep, that's good.
Yeah, so this topic always comes up. I think we may have talked about this even a few years ago when we did a meetup on the media library. But one of our meetup members was asking about taking up file size. They got notice from their host and all, and there's a lot of ways of looking at files that take up space. And this is a relatively simple plugin, the media library file size plugin. And what it does is it just kind of gives you a view of what's in your media library, and it allows you to kind of manage it from file size things. There's different ways to do these things. There always is, but this is a nice, simple one. For anyone who hasn't installed the plugin, you come into your admin section, to the plugins, go to add new, select from the repository media library file size. I have activated it already here, and then what that gives you, let me deactivate. I thought I had it deactivated, but what that gives you is the ability to go into your media area, and when you do that, you've got a new file size section. And in fact, one of the things you can do is they want you to index your media library. And when you index the media library, it just gives you this extra piece, and then you can sort things and find out if you've got, like, all of a sudden you find out, like, oh my goodness, I have this huge file there or there's all these PDF files and things like that. So it's just a simple way to go in and kind of get a view of your media library and see if you've got some giant files out there, and you can manage and delete them. Even doing by file size, sometimes you see where you have duplicates and things like that, because instead of things being spread by date and all, it's doing it by file size. So it's just like a file manager. It adds that one little function of file size to your media library, and that is the media library file size. You can use it and then turn it off, delete it. If you need to clean up, that's a lot of times when we do plugins, we use them for a short period of time to do something, especially when it's doing stuff like this where you're trying to fix, clean something up, and then once you do that, deactivate it and delete it. So that's the quick tip.
And that's the kind of stuff I hope that they start building into the new media library. Just simple things like that, like kind of file management things, or the ability to really track down, hey, where is this? Show me the orphaned attachments, all those kind of things.
I think that is the one thing, coming out in the next version and the versions after that have to do with what you were just describing. Is I'm looking for the improvements to the admin section and the media library, which has been kind of neglected for a pretty long time, which is why there's plugins to manage it a little bit better.
Yeah. Cool. Excellent. Thanks, Peter. Well, why don't you, since you have the
right in
screen, why don't you kick us off here?
All righty. Okay, so I am going to today create a blog post that is accessible, and while I'm doing it, it'll be some, things within this blog post that is what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to try to, and please, interrupt me and say, what if it was this, or break it, or something like that. I'll try to kind of show when something is not right versus what is right. So I'm going to jump right in, but I'm going to talk about something that comes up in the presentation is, well, what is our starting point here? And one of the first things for building an accessible blog post is having an accessible environment for that blog post to live, which is generally your themes, your colors, your fonts, because once you have that kind of baseline thing, and that's its own presentation, and I think it might be something we'll spend some time in the future. Right now, we're going to shorthand it only because if you pick a good theme that's already considered accessible, or is pretty darn close to that, you could be well on your way. And then it's just a matter of getting into the habit of how you write things, which is a lot of what this is about. So the theme I'm using, no surprise, is Cadence, but there's a real reason why I'm using Cadence, which is because they've been putting a lot of effort into making Cadence very accessible. And the developer has been very, Ben Rittner's his name, has been very, he's the head and founder, receptive to suggestions around accessibility. So when they're working on it and putting in the improvements that you want to see, then it's really, a good starting point. Right now, this site it's not fancy, and we can get into kind of design things. And part of my presentation during Accessibility Day, we'll show a little bit more design stuff. Again, you can only do so much within the amount of time that we have. So we're going to kind of talk about some of the basics. One of the reasons why this theme is accessible, and I'm going to open up an incognito window here so I don't have the admin window, is because, and a key thing, and you'll see it in the text that I'm writing, is the fact that it's an accessible website. One of the most important things is, can it be navigated and used with just the keyboard? Because when we're talking about accessibility, we're talking about making a website that is usable by people of all abilities and disabilities. And it's not, a lot of times folks are thinking, oh, vision impaired, blind. It's all kinds of impairments. It could be you when you break your hand and you can't use your mouse. It can be, all kinds of cognitive issues and motor skills and things like that. So allowing everyone to be able to use a website is what we'll talk about when we talk about accessibility. So one of the key things with an accessible theme is being able to tab through things. Now you see, as I'm tabbing, the menu is being highlighted, so you always know where you are, where the focus is. Something that worked really well is this, even the drop down menus. If I hit space and then I can drop down and see it, having that arrow spacing through key, and something that's really important is being able to escape out of that. Because when people are using a keyboard, a big problem is when they get either lost or put into a trap, or made to forced to go through a process because they have no way of getting out of it. And that's in a lot of the demonstrations that I've seen with people using screen readers, for example. It has a lot to do with that whole issue of not knowing where you are, or now being forced to deal with something because you can't just move a mouse to a whole nother place that we're used to dealing with. So that's kind of one of the key things with that. So I'm going to go now onto the back end. I'm going to go into posts. I'm going to all posts, and I'm going to add a new post. And for anybody who's new to WordPress, I am using the block editor. I tend to have the list view open on the left, so it shows me kind of where I am. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start bringing in content. So the first thing I'm going to do is bring in the title. And in oops, not that. That's not the title. This is the title. See what happens when you can't use a mouse. It's, you know, that's one of the problems. If you have motor skills, where all of a sudden, you know, maybe you have Parkinson's, and sometimes motor skills can be a challenge. Being able to use that keyboard is so vitally important. In most WordPress themes, the post or page title will be an H1, a heading 1, which tells in the organization of a document. We're going to get into the details of that. That basically says this thing that this page that you're looking at is about H1 titled document, build an accessible post. So that's what we're typing now. Over to my right, just so that you can see it, I have the text for this post that I'm going to be bringing in.
Hey, Peter, can I ask you a quick question that came up in the chat? Are you using, just for context, are you using the free version of Cadence or are you using the premium version?
This is all free that I'm using today. Premium may be turned on, but I'm not using any of the pro.
That was a question, is like any the accessibility stuff, is it available in the free version as well?
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks.
The pro version is going to give you all of the things where you can hook content into certain areas and a lot more control things. But in terms of things like accessibility, it is built into the theme. Now, one of the things that I'm also playing with, I want to show people, and it's almost like its own tip and trick, is the different places that you can bring copy in from if you wrote into different places. So whether you wrote in a text editor, in Word, and I know this was a question, actually, Judith Ann, I think this goes way back to one of the first questions. Copying and pasting out of Word works beautifully now, including if you're already using headings properly in your Word document. So if you're comfortable editing in a Word document, you can do a lot of the work there or in Google Docs, which is what I have over here. Google Docs, that is what's here, and Google Docs has headings. And again, we'll get into the details of headings, but headings are very, very important because it's the outline of your document. It is the structure of your document. It is your ninth grade English essay class that taught you how to organize a document. And when you got into developing an outline so that you can organize a document, those headings are very, very important because in accessibility, it gives a person who is using assistive technology to kind of get an idea. What is this? Not only what is this document about from the title, now in effect the outline, but maybe they want to navigate it differently. Just like we can scan when we're looking at a screen. I know when you can look at a screen, you can scan to a certain area because you can kind of see it and go, oh, this section is about here. Having the organization of your document is very important for that very reason, to be able to scan to something like that. Now I'm just going to literally copy and paste out of my Word document. I mean, in this case, it's Google Docs. And when I paste that in, we're going to start seeing, okay, it brought in list elements. Now WordPress, the core block list, works well for accessibility. It's reading out in effect the proper, hey, this is list item 1, list item 2 if you're using numbers, things like that. You can see on your list view something that's really important, which is the what blocks do you have. It allows you to navigate things. You can see this continues to improve and improve, whereas I'm mousing over this, I can also see on the right, of course, if I was using a keyboard. And this is a challenge here, by the way. Accessibility for editing documents can be a little bit challenging. WordPress is constantly working on it. That's coming out of the actual development and core team. The next thing that we're going to see, and this is, I can only show you what kind of works here. And see, I can already see that I have an error here, which is because when I copied and pasted something, I missed this section, which is good. I went from the title to a heading 3, so you can see that. In WordPress core, when you're looking at the outline, so far it's only showing if you're using WordPress core heading blocks. This is a block. It's set to heading and it's set to heading 3. If you use other block packages like Cadence, like Spectra, like, there's dozens of them that might have their own way of doing headings. So far, Core isn't using those in the outline view. It's much easier if you use it, but you don't have to. You'd have to check on the front end, or at least pay attention to how you're using headings. What I missed was my H2 here. My H1 is the title, which is build an accessible post. My H2, my first heading section title, introduction. And if you start working just in paragraphs, by the way, you can transform that. You go over to paragraph and then choose heading, and then decide what is it, heading 1, 2, or 3. I want it to be 2. And now my outline is looking correct. So title H1, H2, H3. And so some of these things are the things we already talked about. So kind of the content here is stuff that we can refer to. When I start publishing this, you can even go take a look at it. But it's one thing is a link to our previous presentation that on accessibility. And so a lot of the resources and stuff are referenced there. But I'm just bringing in this content. And again, if I had this here, assumption 3 set to an H1, for example, I'm getting a kind of a yellow warning. No, that's not correct. You don't put an H1 after an H2, and you should only have one H1. In very rare cases, as I understand it, there may be a heading 1, more than one on a page, but generally I don't see the reason for it, and you would definitely want to stay away from it. The trap that people get caught into is they want to use it for styling and formatting. And choosing the heading H1, H2, H3 is about organizing your document, not styling. You can control the style separately over in your right bar. And then if you have different types of block packages, you may have even additional styling. So let me go back and change this to the H3 that it's supposed to be. Now we're back in order. So I'm starting to build this. The assumptions I kind of talked about already. We're using accessible theme, some details about it. And we have selected colors that work well together. Accessibility. Color contrast is very important. Not using colors as the only clue on what to do. Like green means go, red means stop. But if you don't use some other words around it that explain things, that's not considered accessible if you're only relying on colors. So there's a whole lot of details on colors. I like a tool that is a color contrast grid. I put the link in what we're building. So I'm going to keep bringing content over. I'm going to the end of that paragraph. I'm pasting in. I have another H3 here. So that H3 as selected is, again, because defining website accessibility, I still have under my introduction. So that's the organization of this particular page. And this, when we get into website accessibility, they use the acronym POUR, perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust, which basically means you got to be able to see it. It has to work. It needs to be understandable, and it needs to be, as robust as content that you're going to provide anyone else, not like slim down, trim down kind of thing. So that's the POUR acronym. And so now I'm going to get into the next section I want to share here, which is, again, I'm copying and pasting from this Google Doc. It could be Word, it could be just text, or you could be writing this right into your editor. If I was writing into this editor, this will go for 3.5 hours. So we don't want to do that. So again, now that I've added these, you're going to see this is an H2. I'm starting a new H2 section. So that's how that is working for the organization. I want to put a WAPU graphic line right. So we're going to do our first graphic, slash to get my list of blocks. I'm going to choose the image block. I have already loaded in my media library this guy here. And I've actually already added the alt text, which I'm going to talk about right now. Alt text it's very important to describe the images that you have on your website and describe them in such a way that is clear and fair. It's not all about keyword stuffing at all. It's about saying what it is the thing is. It's about giving the person who can't see the image the same or as close to, an experience that somebody who can see the image. So in this case, I added the text cute little Wapu mascot. So the Wapu is a WordPress mascot that's been used in a lot of different ways, a lot of different versions of it. Holding, and I probably say cute little yellow is a little bit more accurate. Wapu mascot holding a blue ball with an accessibility icon. So when I insert that, I'm going to change for my image size. I'm going to change it to the medium size, and I am going to right align it. So now I'm embellishing my content. This part here that I added is not a bullet list, but a numbered list. So when you highlight the list, you can choose whether it's you could choose whether it's a bulleted list or a number list through this box up here. And we're going to make this a numbered list. Some of this content, by the way, is my friend ChatGPT helped me kind of, boil down a lot of the material out there. So that's what I've used to create a lot of this content. Now I've got an image here that is got accessibility, alt text. I'm going to publish this because what I'm going to do is two things. The first thing is I'm going to go over and I'm going to view the post. I'm going to do it in an incognito window. The reason I'm doing it in an incognito window is because when you use tools like what I'm going to show you, the Wave plugin. So Wave is a really nice, not plugin, but a Chrome extension. The WordPress menu has a few accessibility issues. So I like to just open it up in an incognito window. So I'm not logged in, so I don't see the WordPress menu at the top. My Wave extension here, and if you go to add extensions, Google Chrome add extension, Wave is a very well-known extension. It's probably one of the easiest to just install, and then when you're on a page, you click on that, and it tells you what the status is of your what your web page is showing. And this is showing right now that I've got 0 errors in terms of accessibility errors. I have 0 contrast errors because I don't have like light on light or colors that don't meet a certain level of contrast. And if you did have an error, you would be pointed to that area through the details. If you click on this tab here, details, and then your errors would be red. You click on them and it would give you some details about what you might be looking at, especially things like color contrast. And it says, oh, this color on this color, the contrast ratio is too low. You need to change that, and even with a lot of help on how to change it. One of the things that does come up, because the website itself, it's thinking that this first thing might be, this is a warning, not an error, because it's actually not an error. That first the homepage link, if you will, might actually be a heading, but it doesn't need to be. It'd be like your logo. So it's just saying, hey, we think this might be a heading, but we're not sure. But right now the rest of the document shows up fine. So that's the Wave tool that we'll keep returning to. The other thing I'm going to do is on the back end very quickly is I'm going to go to a plugin. And while I'm doing this, is there any questions coming up? I know I'm kind of lightning round through all this.
No, but Judith Ann just had like a question / comment about headings also being important, or are they still important for SEO as well? Just beyond accessibility. And my answer was yes, they still are, but that wasn't the primary purpose of them. I mean, my understanding, like Bill's not here, but it was really to help search engines understand context, like structure, and kind of what content is emphasized. But yes, they're still used for that. But my caveat too is, like, with all the changes in search engines and AI and all that, it's I wouldn't count on that always being true in the future.
Yeah. The one of the key takeaways I like people to have, although we haven't talked about it yet, is accessibility. Paying attention to accessibility is not, don't do it because there are legal obligations, although there are. Don't It's not a trendy thing. It's about making a website available to the most number of people. But what that also means is that your site becomes that much more usable. When it's that much more usable and that much more clearly defined, by default, it makes it better for more users of all folks, including people who don't have an accessibility requirement. And it's also better for Google. So search engine optimization benefits from writing web content that is clearly organized, heading set, because Google's doing the same thing. In fact, Google is a screen reader, right? So a lot of this, we're talking about people using a screen reader and being able to go through something by having it read back to them. Google, in fact, is doing the same thing. It is reading the content and going, what is this about? So the more clear you are and the more organized you are, the more Google's going to know what the page is about. And you have a better chance of being indexed high. So it's a win-win-win by far. It's just, it can be frustrating when it's like, oh, I don't, blind people don't buy my cars, right? Well, one, that's not true by a long shot, and two, anything you're going to do for somebody who can use accessibility is going to help you sell more cars. It's just going to be the way it is. I'm going to turn on a plugin called the Accessibility Checker. This is by Equalize Digital. It's a very good, is a really good plugin. In fact, if you've watched anything with the last WordCamp US, the keynote at the beginning was all about NASA using this particular plugin to make their content accessible. And in fact, they have contributed to Equalize Digital to make sure that there's further development on the accessibility checker. It's a great tool for getting immediate feedback while you're editing content. And I'm going to activate that. And now what it's going to do when I come over to this post, the build an accessible post that we've got, is, let me make sure that I've just got one reason to update it. And then let me reload it. And now what I'm going to have is at the bottom of the screen, it's going to take a minute to read the page, but the accessibility checker is now going to be on my page, and it's going to give me kind of the score as we go. And it's going to give me kind of like a lot of information if I have errors, what those errors might be, with all kinds of information, what's going on in the code and things like this. This is an incredible tool for really paying attention down to the code level as you drill down to it. But the first thing is start with the, hey, what are my issues? And then be able to kind of say, okay, where is it? And now they recently added a front end tool, which I will show you that it just makes it, really easy to do this stuff kind of live time. So that, which is great. I am going to bring in the next chunk of content, which
Can I ask there's two quick ones on the chat. One is just, if you go scroll up a second, someone was asking about how did you insert that image and have the text wrap?
So that is when you insert an image in the toolbar right above the image, or if you have this toolbar pinned to the top, it might be up here. You do have an alignment set of options. So I can align left. I can align center, which will be center will push everything down. It will be on the top. So it's basically aligning left and right. You can even go gigantic. This is where you control kind of how the image works. So clicking on align right on the image moves it to the right, and that basically it floats it, the old HTML, floating it to the right, and then the text will wrap around it.
And one other quick one too, somewhere in there, I didn't see when you're typing it, but somewhere you added a like an anchor link to skip down the content. Do you?
So on the front end, and I don't have that to get into the details, to get to like adding custom ones, because there are ways to do it. But if you are first loading it, you have a skip to content. That was that what we were referencing? Because that's
I think
built into
so.
that's when you have a good accessible theme. Because what happens is if somebody has already knows the navigation and they reload the page and they want to be going through all the, they could just skip to the content, and now they skip over that heading. Different themes might say skip to even footer, because a lot of times there's a lot of content in the footer. And then with tools that I'm not prepared to talk about today, but maybe in a follow-up, you could add additional like section links. There are table of content blocks that will take your headings. That's what I use for when we do our slide presentations.
But that one that you just showed here, that was from Cadence, right?
That's from Cadence,
Yeah.
right?
Okay, I think that was a question. Thanks.
Yeah, and we can show other a number of other good quality themes also have that capability. Yeah, definitely. So in choosing themes, I got a note up here, I believe. It says, so you can, in the repository, you can filter by accessibility. But however many excellent accessible themes like Cadence do not have that tag for a couple of reasons. One is it has to be specifically applied for, and then you have to wait for the review team to be able to go through it and give you that tag. So that's a couple of reasons. And then and maybe later when we get a break, if we could play with the whole idea of the whole what you get when you search for something on Google, and best WordPress themes for accessibility. You can get a whole lot of themes that have very poor accessibility, because that's exactly what I found when I did that search. Never mind the ads you're going to get for the overlays that we'll talk about briefly a little bit later. So now we're still editing this page. I'm going to bring in the next chunk of content. So the importance of, I'm copying over on my right here. And if you want to get this out of the way, you can shrink it down through the I don't know what they call this anymore. It was a meta box before. But the box for the accessibility checker, I can kind of get it out of my way until I want to use it again. So I brought over some more content. If I look at my list view, you can see the different blocks. If I look at my outline, I'm sticking to H2s, H3s, H2s, nesting that H3 underneath. So if I go to key considerations, and again, think about it. If you can read this outline and it makes sense, like, oh, okay, under key considerations for accessibility, I have the importance of keyboard navigation and properly ordering and nesting headings under that topic, kind of makes sense. This is not, by the way, a comprehensive, all-inclusive accessibility lesson. It's meant to be used as a demonstration. I had a placeholder here for an image. Again, I'm going to go slash image. I'm going to grab from the media library. I've already uploaded it. This image here. Again, I had already put the alt text close up of oh, that should be black keyboard with backlit keys.
Since you were talking alt text there for a second, I don't know if you have this in your main presentation, but just to reemphasize like your point around SEO too, like a lot, the old thing was like using alt text for SEO purposes, and like what is its actual intent?
Yeah, so its actual intent is to help somebody who can't see the image know what the image is, just like somebody who could see the image knows what the image is. So that's why this really shouldn't say something about selling your product. It should say this is a close-up of black keyboard with backlit keys, because as the person is going through this, and if you ever listen to somebody using a screen reader, it goes by so fast. It's unbelievable how fast I've heard some people using screen readers. But where they get hung up is either like, I don't know what that image is, or now you're filling it with information that is nothing but a distraction and has nothing to do with what this is about. You're just annoying me. It'd be like, it'd be like covering your website with tons of pop-ups just because that's what you want people to do versus, I'll show you something real quick on the images for new folks. So this is where you want to set, again, this is all WordPress core. So I'm not using a Cadence image block or anything like that. You could certainly, but say I wanted to make this kind of a wide format. You can change your aspect ratio right here in the block. This is a nice new feature here. I think I like on this a 2:1. Oh, that's okay. I'll just leave it the way it is. But anyway,
this one, not to sorry keep interrupting you, Peter, but this is another reminder of you're using the core image block because that's what
correct.
Joe had the question. So back to other page builders and things like that. I know that's always been an annoyance of Divi. Divi doesn't expose that to you very easily. They may have updated it since. I haven't actually used Divi in a couple of releases now, but that was always a problem. They hid the alt text from you, so it was it was hard to kind of do this kind of stuff.
Not only do you have the alt text, but you also have a title attribute if that's important. Again, use something, relying on the title attribute and accessibility is not recommended, but it has its value. So that's yet another attribute. So if you look at the code, you see title equals and what's in quotes. That's the thing that will give you if you mouse over and then you see the little, like, in effect, tooltip kind of thing. Use that carefully. HTML anchor might be where you actually want to link to, this, you give it an ID, and then you can set a link to that particular thing. Set a different class. So there's a lot of things you can do right in the core blocks that keep adding a lot of great functionality. So everything I'm using today is core, which I think is really nice. So let's go to the next thing that I've got. So I'm going to have a little break here, and this is another image I've got, and this is a different. So I'm going to image. I'm going to grab from the media library, and not that this one makes sense, but I'm going to grab this little star. I'm going to select it. It's a big star. I'm going to use the size is medium. The only reason I'm not going to thumbnail, even though I'm going to make it basically thumbnail size, is if the image itself in this particular case is not perfectly square, the thumbnail will, because of the nature of the thumbnail image, it will potentially crop this. I know this is a square image, so this will be fine. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to set the width of this to 60. So now I've got this little square. Maybe I'll set it to 80. I have this little star. I'm going to center it by clicking a line, hit align center. But what I'm not going to do in this particular case is give it alt text. I could say star, but when somebody is reading in a screen reader, decorative text like icons, very often it just becomes an interruption, a disturbance, something unnecessary to look at while we're trying to get the same experience. Very often icons are either redundant or just not necessary. This is coming directly from Alex Stein, who is one of the key accessibility people on the Make team. Make is kind of the people who volunteer, some are paid on the back end, kind of building a lot of WordPress. But he was like, don't give alt text for images. Now, you might say, well, you have to have alt text or else I'm going to get an error. Not necessarily the case, because it is now understood, and WordPress has built in, if you don't put anything in, it actually gives alt text of the attribute of a null value, which a screen reader will not read. So you're not actually missing the alt text. You are intentionally not including it. And so the image in effect becomes invisible to screen readers intentionally. Now, you could forget to do all alt text, and then all of your images will be null, but that would not be good accessibility. That's not a good accessibility practice. It's just decorative text that we want to make have an alt text of nothing, a null value here. So now if I go back to, where is it? No, I'll just, by the way, this little guy here is relatively new. Viewing the post, which you used to have to kind of go URL open. Now we have a little in-core, a nice little view the post in a separate window. In this case, I told it in my incognito window. If I check my wave settings, again, I've got 0 errors, 0 contrast errors, that same alert. So, we're good. We're chugging along really well. The next thing that I have is kind of interesting, and I'm not gonna. I don't think we have the kind of time to really get into it, but I do want to talk about it a little bit, which is.
Peter, can I ask real quick before you leave the screen? Judithan had a question. So that percentage that you showed,
yes,
below, are you trying to hit like a number there? She's saying, are you trying to hit like a?
Oh, this here?
Yeah, are we trying to get to 100%? Is that the goal?
So yes-ish. Again, everything in terms of testing and looking at scores and things like that is more indicators than anything absolute. Just like your web vitals, your core web vitals, it's like looking for issues. The reason that this tool is right now showing 88%, I'm believe is because I'm writing this at a very high reading level. So for cognitive issues, that's not very accessible. So one thing I would want to do, go in and either use do a simplified summary that basically boils things down, or relook at the copy. Some of this again is just brought over from ChatGPT to try to say make it a different level of reading, right? So in effect, a lower level, and the readability has its own tab here, and it's talking about, okay, so right now we're at grade 11, and it's saying, we're aiming for 9th grade, right? So newspapers aimed for 6th grade, I think, at one point, but it's at the 9th grade level to basically, make sure that things like we don't have run-on, really long sentences when we could have a couple of sentences, and we don't have extra words that are filler words and things like that. So going in and editing your content is always a good practice. I just haven't done it to a level of degree so that my score here is showing 12th at this level. It's actually probably 11th next time we refresh it. That's one of the score. But yeah, I mean, you obviously, green is good. Green is what we're going for. And then what I do want to also show you is that if I show you this on the front end while logged in, this is where a new tool for a new addition to the accessibility checker is a front end tool. If you can see in the bottom right of the screen, and if I click on that, it's going to do that same kind of analysis and give me an idea. It's always going to find issues with the top menu because now I'm logged in. But it might say, it's going to tell me, oh, there's things we're finding, and let's get into a level of detail. And what's really also good about this tool is you get into a level of documentation where they have documented kind of every error and what it might mean on their website. It's crazy good. It really is. So let's close this. Let's go back here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one piece because I want to talk about more what it is and go through the full process. So let me just bring this over. Well, I just pasted in something that I've already done on another page where it's already set up. So this is the table block. The table block is core. There are efforts to make the table block more accessible. It's not completely not accessible, but it's not as good as it could be. And what it has a lot to do with, if you have a data table, you want to be able to tell people, on a screen reader, what a column heading is and what a row heading is. Now we can get the column heading that is built into the core table block, and right now, I've pre-filled this. But what you don't have is the row header. So making the first thing row say, this row is everything you see to the right of this thing is about the thing, right? So that's your header. Just like you have headers for columns, you have headers for rows. This is something that hopefully is going to be worked on. I have another tool, and I link to it down here, the HTML table generator. It allows you to create a table, bring in a CSV file, and then give it the right, say, hey, my first column is my first column is the row headings, my top row is the column headings. And then if you paste this back in, it still works perfectly within the table block, but you can't make it just that way unless you do the one magic thing where you go in here and you say edit as HTML. And when you can do this on any block, and when you do this edit as HTML, you can see basically what is happening, which is, let me find one. So you've got, oh, and I think, you know what happened? It actually truncated out on the copy and paste, because what you normally would get is you would get th scope equals row telling you something like that. So that's something I got to add additional code to this to show what's going on. But this idea of making that, so that's the whole thing about tables. Maybe you don't need tables a lot, but I think people don't use tables sometimes because they're kind of, you know, sure, you might not need it, or they seem kind of scary, but adding a table is pretty straightforward. You add a table block, and then you tell it how many rows and columns, and you start filling out the blocks. You can tell it in core what your header is in terms of the column header. You just right now can't tell it what the row header is. I have another decorative image here, and no alt text. It was added the same way. So in this section now, if I update this and we take a look at it, now you can see, and by the way, anybody wants to, I'll actually change this to make it even easier. This is live. You can go take a look at accessiblewp.org, build an accessible post with dashes in between. So as I'm updating it, you can go take a look. You won't see the accessibility checker because I'm logged in on this side. But this is where I've added a few recommended plugins that I like, the accessibility checker, WP Accessibility, and I have these also in the presentation we gave before that I have a link at the beginning and end of this page that we're building. All right, so now just keep going, and this touches on a topic that we mentioned kind of pre the call. Let me shrink this down to give us, I'll come here. And I just copied and pasted again from whether it's my Word document, my Google Doc, another page. I'm talking about plugins recommended. This is my big no. Plugins to avoid. There are several plugins, both in repository and available commercially, that are not recommended for accessibility. These are overlays. Let's bold that. They add code to offer a variety of tools to the site. The problem is these tools often make sites less accessible, but it's that one-click instant, hey, load this plugin, turn it on, you are compatible, you are accessible, you are compliant. It's not the case. And if you want to learn more, you can go to the overlay fact sheet, which tells you all about who they are, what they do, what they say, what to be warned out. And it's signed by lots of people who are saying overlays are bad. So this is the quick thing that says, okay, when you do a search for accessibility, let's do it real quick. Generally, let's see. Where are my ads? Oh, I don't have any ads right now. I don't know if I have ads turned off, but you will see all kinds of ads for plugins and tools that are for these overlays. I'm very curious why I didn't get that. Maybe I've told it, don't ever show this to me again. But anyway, be careful of overlays. They are not the benefit that they claim to be. They're just not. Take that. Again, now looking back at my list view, looking at my outline, again, we're keeping this outline very neat and tidy. H2's H3's underneath. H2 key considerations, the importance of recommended plugins. We might want to put another heading above that. So maybe I'll do that. I'll go, and here's, if you don't know this is a neat little simple trick. You click on something, insert, you can go to add before, and then you can say, I'm just going to call it plugins as a paragraph. Now I'm going to say, make that a heading, and that's an H2. And now you can see in my outline, H2 consideration. Now I have an H2 plugins and 2 plugin topics, which again makes perfect sense in the layout of a document. I was going to show a video on it, but let's see if we've got time afterwards, because I'm gonna put at the bottom.
If you had a link to it or something, Peter, too, I can also just put it in the chat.
Yeah, no, this is I wanted to talk a little bit about, well, let me just do it. I'm going to see how this copies over. I'm not sure if the plugin's going to copy. Let me just grab everything and see what happens. Oh, I didn't want to bring that video. Okay, oh yeah, it did. Okay. So here's the thing with videos. And this goes more on kind of a page overview. So videos, do not autoplay them, please. It breaks all kinds of accessibility rules. One of the categories of people who we're trying to help are people who have issues with cognitive, neurodivergence, motion sensitivity. Websites that have animation for no particular reason, things flying in and out, not good. Not good for me, and I don't have those issues. I just don't like it. But that's me. But opening up a page and auto playing a video, especially if you don't give somebody the opportunity to turn it off, which in some cases happens with like background images, animated GIFs that you can't turn off, are all accessibility issues. And again, quite honestly, while it's an accessibility issue, it's also, you're putting annoying topic content in there in a lot of cases. Unnecessarily, I see a lot of work sometimes going in to make everything fly in from the sides, and none of it helps. And most of it is just not only annoying, but if you fast scroll like I do, pages look blank until everything starts flying in. So animation and things like that are something to be careful of. In this case, this is a YouTube embedded file, which has its own issues, but there's other ways of showing videos and things like that, and making sure that the tools, this is kind of built into YouTube and it's understood by most people who are using it. One of the things that they generally want, this was actually something that came up as an issue with the accessibility checker that I saw a red flag on, was, oh, you got a video but you don't have a transcript. Now, it's not always easy to do it. A lot of times we don't get the transcripts. I ended up going to the YouTube video, getting the transcript, which looks like it was auto-generated. No, actually, it wasn't auto-generated. Somebody was typing it and transcribing it as they could, because you could see where they said unintelligible, not sure what he said, that type of thing. But then I used this new block, which is the detail block. I don't know if anyone's used this, but in the detail block, it's basically made of 2 sections, the title of the thing and then the detail that's in it. So then what happens is, you can open and close it. So in this particular case, I'm looking at the video down that's now here.
Yeah, that was new with 6.3.
New in 6.3.
It was like the accordion.
Yeah. So we're not auto starting this or anything like that. But the transcript, which is actually quite long, can be shared in this. And again, clearly labeling something. The transcript of the video, when you click on this, it's going to give you the transcript of that video. So again, helping people who, are hearing impaired. Now, this also would have closed captioning and things like that, but having transcripts is good. It's understood to some degree that it's not always, but if you want to have best accessibility, you're gonna want to have those transcripts. So then, in wrapping up here, so I'm just kind of closing it. if you start with a good foundation for accessibility, including theme, colors, and fonts, creating consistently accessible content is not too difficult. It just becomes a new habit, looking at how your headings are, whether it's on the front end or the back end. If we look at this, I'm going to update this. And I'm going to look at it, and we can play with some other tools depending on the time. Incognito window. And then I use my wave tool. And I look at, this shows me, and the wave tool, you also have the order of things. The tab order is really important. Again, if you've got a good theme, things should go in the right order. I can show you other Chrome extensions that'll show you lines that show, okay, you're going here, here. So if somebody's tabbing through, does the tab order make sense? So are you going from, 1, 2, 3, 4, that type of thing? That's the order here. The structure, that's your H1s and H2s, and are they in the right order? And do they really kind of play out as you look across down through your content? You're saying, okay, things are in the right place. So just as a habit, looking at this and going, great, we're in order. If I all of a sudden if I made recommended this again, if I made this an H1 or something, it's going to go, nope, you've got this is not in the right order. This is this should be an H3 because now this outline makes sense. So that, let's see, what else do I have in my wrap up here? Of course, linking to the Accessibility Day. By the way, if you want to see this real quick, if I come over here, if you didn't know that you could do this, if you go to your post or your page, and then you go to your URL, and now it defaults to the title with hyphens in between. But if I wanted to change this to just build, for example, that's the URL. So if you ever wondered how do I change the URL, it's under your post, or if you're in a page, your page, and then you go to URL, and then if you click on it, you can edit it. So now if anybody wants to go to accessiblewp.org/build, you will see this page. Oh, and
yeah, there was actually a question about that, Peter. Are you going to add that to the menu or something? I know you were in the middle of creating it. Are you going to add it someplace?
This here, yeah. So here's what we'll do. We'll do two more things. First, as I'm looking at the post, what I want to do is I'm going to add a featured image. This featured image does have alt text, and it does get brought over. Again, if you just added it, you can still, at the time of adding, you change the alt text. Once it's in, you can change the alt text, and it will be brought over. So I'm going to insert that.
Well, I'm sorry, while you had that up, because Joe dropped off, but she had a question earlier about the title. You said something about the title. I missed that. Like, how does that differ than the alt text? I think was her question.
The title for an image.
The image, yeah.
So what the title does, and I'll admit I'll have to look up the real details, but they're similar. The title is when, if you mouse over it, you will see that text pop up in a little box, like a tooltip. We used to call them tooltips.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that the title attribute does. It also does get read by screen readers, although it's, as I understand it, less reliable for accessibility. And then if you have content in both, now you're getting redundant stuff and you're throwing a whole lot of words at somebody who just wants to know what the picture's about.
And maybe Sherry has another similar question of captions too. I guess the same kind of thing. Like, so a caption on an image. I guess it's the same idea.
Yeah. But so in a lot of cases, it might be like, say you had a picture of, a caption would be detailed. Like if you think about a newspaper, and it'd be like Peter Ingersoll, WordPress teacher, and whatever you might put under a caption for something that's giving context to that image. But the alt text might be a white male with a white beard kind of, that type of. A lot of times you're in presentations, a little bit more description of, or dress casually out, in an outdoor setting, that type of thing.
And the big difference is kind of obvious, but the caption generally is visible to everybody as opposed
And the
to
caption is visible to everyone.
yeah. So
Caption-
Sherry, captions are good because captions are they're visible to sighted people, and it'll get picked up by a screen reader for non-sighted. So yeah, keep doing what you're doing with captions for the blog.
Yeah, and with captions too, what you can do is you can have links in the caption. It's basically just a text block below your image that you can format. You can do, depending on, unless your theme overrides it, which in some cases happens. But yeah, the caption is much more contextual versus descriptive about the image, although again, they can be similar. What I wanted to grab was one thing here on the post. Also, whenever you're doing posts, and pages, if you put in an excerpt, whether it's because on your archive page or however else, something that describes it versus WordPress trying to grab the first few lines of copy, having something descriptive certainly helps. Now, if we take a look at this page, my featured image based on what settings I have for the theme to say how to use that featured image. That's now there. The table. This is the link that I'm showing, which is to our other presentation, which is when we did the getting started. And there's a lot more things in terms of plugins. I talk about overlays. I can't remember how long ago we did this presentation, but gets into the details about it. But I wanted to make sure we spent some time on the actual, all right, that's all great conceptually. Now, how do I do it? So that's what this was meant to be. Any other questions? I've got to figure out how.
I'll take everyone off mute in a second so we can open things up. But just one real quick one, because you talked about it. I don't know, Peter, if you're going to do this in your, I know your presentation for Accessibility Day is also covering pages, but can you show real quick? I know it's been in WordPress for a couple of releases now. The WordPress color contrast checker thing, like how it'll give you a warning. I think that's built into the core, if I'm not mistaken. That's not into like the 2023 theme, right?
Let's give this a shot. So if I take this, so here's something. If I take this,
I think you put a background or something too, that might be the thing or put it in a group.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do, is put it in a group. So say I took these and then I group them. And now in the group, I wanted to set the background color to be that color gray. Let's try something ridiculous, which is that color gray. Now I get a warning. This is where WordPress is doing its best to try to tell you. It's reading what your text color is and what your background, in this case, a default text, and what your background color is. And it's saying, when I do the numbers, because these are just numbers that have a ratio of difference between them, you got an issue here. I wonder if and where this tool will find it too. Now that we're
contrast errors, I would think that's where it would be.
It's not seeing it yet. If I go to this, if I go here and go here, and then run so let's make sure it's there. Oh,
I think you didn't save it, maybe.
Maybe I didn't save it.
Yeah.
I also found something that's a little bit weird, where sometimes my incognito window doesn't, it's like it's caching separately, and no matter what I do. I found that today. It's driving me crazy. Let's close all of this. Let's just go to the regular page and just ignore the WordPress menus. Where do I have that? There, right there. There's a chunk of bad text. And now if I run Wave on this, I have an error, and I'm going to guess it's contrast error, very low contrast. And when you click on this, it's going to show you where it is, which is exactly what we knew it was. WordPress.
Nice. I know that got added a couple of releases back, I think, in WordPress in the 60s.
Yeah, it's great. There's the more tools like that. Other tool, like if you own Gravity Forms, which is a premium plugin for creating forms, And other WS Form I think does this too. I'm not sure if Fluent Forms brought it in, but they're doing a lot of accessibility just within, okay, you're doing a form and here's things, and they're going to give you accessibility warnings. Forms are notorious for having issues. So it's good to see better attention, and ultimately with the goal of just making things easier for us. For anyone who doesn't know, if you go in your list view, you can also just kind of drag and drop things around. I'm pulling stuff out of this group, and then I'm just gonna delete the group. And now we're kind of back to where we were.
Another quick comment thrown in there by DK says that the table on that post you just created doesn't appear to be responsive on small screens.
So that's a very good point, and that's why the core table is not the best for a whole lot of reasons. I actually use something called Ninja Tables, but Ninja Tables does not, crazy for a premium, does not do the row header. So tables are an issue. And that's exactly, that's a really good point. And one thing I didn't cover here, and I need to make a point of covering it, which is accessibility also under the category of accessibility is responsiveness for things like mobile devices. Considering, by the way, most of the people in the world go to websites using their phone. If you're not sitting at the desk like we are right now, and a lot of folks don't even have a desktop computer, and I'm talking globally, you know, they're going on a mobile device, a phone. Tables are notorious for not working on phones just because you're trying to put too much content in too small an area. And in some cases, you may just opt out of putting it there, or you know, going for alternative, use a block visibility plugin and show a table for desktop, and show, this could also be done in just kind of a column view. And again, some of the table plugins are better and worse. I should spend some more time kind of looking into which ones for responsiveness, but really good point. And there's a lot of images, there's a lot of columns here. What I also didn't talk about a lot is dyslexia, using the right font choice, keeping the fonts clean, but also being really kind of aware, like I'm really pushing the limits on the width of these columns for readability. I can make the font larger so there's less words, which would be, a pretty good solution. Use columns a little bit differently, but making it, the more you have to read across, you're making it harder for folks who have a hard time following across the line of text.
Dude, Than just asked real quick, is there a standard font size? I don't know if there really is for.
Yeah, I don't know if there is either. You will get things when you're looking at color contrast that also ties into font size. So part of the formula might say, okay, above a certain size, these two colors work fine. People can see it. But if you're below a certain size, now it's too hard for folks to see. The contrast needs to be greater. So that is one factor, font size as it combines to font color over a background color.
And so, Peter, I know you're kind of wrapping up. I put the link to WordPress Accessibility Day in there. So if folks are, again, interested in this, there's a lot more that gets covered in that. What day, just to give you the kudos, what day are you speaking on in that?
Yeah, I got to remind myself.
Do you know?
I got a good time. I'm 5 o'clock our time.
Okay, good.
So, which is good.
Folks, you want to hear this? Well, you're also going to cover a little bit more. So you're going to cover pages, but this is obviously there's some differences between them. So if you want to hear Peter give us again, or instead of watching our re-recording of this, but you feel free to. But yeah, there's a lot of speakers on that. I watched a lot from last year's Accessibility Day, and it was a lot of great topics covered.
Yeah, and I'll tell you the 24 hours of topics. So this has been, over the last few years, has been some of the best content, because it is not only specific to WordPress and specific to accessibility, but for some reason, there's a lot of practical information on it that I found over the years. So, and a lot of recognizable to me, which is great. Here's me. So on 5 p.m. American time on I guess I should put this in my calendar, right?
Too late.
Yeah, September 27th, which is it's in just in 1 week.
Yeah, ish.
Yeah. So Amber is
Yeah.
Equalized Digital. If you're interested more in accessibility, I have the link in the link to our last presentation to the accessibility meetup and Facebook group. That meetup, so much content constantly. They have a podcast that they do where they go over a lot of things. It's Amber, and her husband and their developer do so much work. The other recognizable names, Joe Dolson, who also was author of one of the plugins that I shared, just like Amber's company is Equalized Digital. A lot of really great people. And then if you're really, really interested, there is an accessibility team in Make. So Make is the folks who work on WordPress core, and there is an accessibility team. And this is what the way when you go to this, you see all of the posts in that particular team on a particular group and all, and you can kind of see what team meetings are about and all. So like I'm part of the Make team that I follow in Slack, and where the conversations are about things, and I'll be kind of following up on this whole table thing because I think it's pretty important. So what else? I can
Well,
all day.
no other questions in the chat, and I unmuted everyone. So if you want to just either ask, if you have any questions for Peter, feel free to unmute yourself around the presentation or anything else. I know we have around 30 minutes left tonight. So any questions about your websites or anything? I'll stop. Why don't you stop sharing if you want, Peter?
Let me do that.
It's easier to see folks. So any general WordPress questions, or again, anyone have issues on their sites? We love looking at sites. People are brave enough to show us their sites. Again, you should be able to unmute yourselves now. Hopefully, I think I did that right.
Yeah, I on the website I created a sign up form for people to sign up and then pay for it on PayPal. And the way it used to work, and I guess it's changed, is PayPal, you just had a PayPal button. Now you have pay later, you have the credit card, and you have Venmo. And I guess PayPal bought Venmo. I went round and round with them about just having the PayPal button there, but they said it couldn't be done, I guess. So
You can
it's
still,
okay. I mean, it's working, and people are able to sign up and pay for it online. And I have it tied in with Google Forms so that the people that are going to be there for, signing and registering people, they have all that information on the Google form.
or were you, maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying, Ray, though. You can still put in an embedded PayPal button on forms, so not using like a plugin or anything, just putting the script for like an embedded PayPal button. You can still do that on, there's a few websites I know that I manage that still are doing that. They haven't stopped it. Like,
that would be helpful. What I use is JotForm. I use JotForm to create the form, and then you can embed at least what they had, and maybe I wasn't looking at the right thing, what they have.
So so you wanted a form with the PayPal connection to it, right? So you want
it has the PayPal connection, but I didn't really want Venmo. I didn't want pay later. I didn't mind the credit card part where they can put in a credit card number and pay for that. But when I did this before, this a few years ago, there was just a PayPal button. Click, hit PayPal, and it connects you directly to PayPal.
That's probably more the issue of that form tool that you're using as opposed to
It's possible.
PayPal
It's
thing.
possible.
Yeah.
The good thing with the form is Jot form, because I've used it before. In addition to registering, they have to upload certain forms. They have to have a vaccination for their horse, so they have to upload that form. There's also a standard test that the horses get. It's called a Coggins, and they have to be able to upload that. And I found Jot form was easier to incorporate that, although Fluent Forms is something that I actually purchased, and I'm going to start playing around with that.
I know Peter, I think you use it as well too.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now that you said that, I would give that a try, because you can, I mean, if you have the pro version, embedding PayPal, you can have more control over things.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. And I bought the pro version because it's not that expensive.
No, it really isn't. And it's really, really good. The best three are Fluent Forms, Gravity Forms, and WS Form. And they all have tools in pro versions or premium tools for doing what you're talking about doing. So, and including like uploading files and things like that.
Right. Yeah, they were jumping on me that we got to get this out. We got to get this.
Yeah.
This event's happening on the 24th of October. So, okay, I know Jot form. I can do it. We'll get it there. And then after this season, then I'm going to start looking at the Fluent Forms, maybe another better way to do it.
Cool.
I'm just curious what other people use their websites for. As I say, I'm a member of a fox hunting club. That's what I use mine for. Now, we don't hunt the foxes anymore. We lay a scent and the hounds follow the scent. But I'm just curious what other people use WordPress for, what kind of things they do with it.
Folks want to jump? I mean, I do it more for clients. So, I mean, I see the gamut of everything, nonprofits using it for fundraising, using for getting the word out. Anything you can think, any website. That's the thing that, WordPress is a little sneaky in the sense of, unless you have the tools, it's hard to tell if a site is WordPress. So almost any website you can think of pretty much could be WordPress. There's exceptions, but use it for anything.
I have a question about links.
Sure.
Are they good or bad?
Expand your question. What do you mean links, good or bad?
When we're writing a blog, we sometimes will put in links to either a previous blog or something outside that gives more information.
Yep.
Are those good things to use?
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Whenever you can, in fact, our plugins do things like search within your own content to see if something should be linked to it. It's better if you kind of know, so you don't have the overhead of those. But whenever you're connecting information, that means that your content is a source of information, including external links. One of the things I didn't talk about in the accessibility thing, in fact, there's a plugin for that, is a lot of times people want their links to always open in a new tab or a new window.
Not a good idea, right?
You don't need to do it. It's all like, well, I want them to stay on my site and read. It's like, no, again, you're taking control out of the hands of people, especially if they're using screen reader. And if you're going to do it, you have to make it very clear, because then they get confused. They hit the back button and there's no content there because it opened up in a new tab. But that goes for, I right click and open in a new tab. I have control over it. So yeah, again, that whole thing about, keep opening everything in a new tab. Unless you really need it, avoid it.
I mean, the linking to internal content, from an SEO standpoint, is supposed to be beneficial because it's just showing that you're kind of self-referencing other pages on your site. So you're saying this content is valuable. So it's a good thing to do that, definitely.
How much detail should you give when you're creating a link? Like, we'll be writing a blog and we'll mention hot peppers. We wrote a blog on hot peppers. Is it appropriate to put a link on the hot peppers? Or
hot peppers?
link? Yeah.
I think you want it. That's the thing. Some people just put in a link without any corresponding text behind it, and that's just a little confusing even to the person clicking on it. So I think if you give it, you help give it context. So
By the way, also an accessibility topic, right? So links having some meaning. Where am I going and why? In that particular case, I would probably, if you say the word hot peppers, I might parenthetically say, read our article and give the link title. You've titled it something.
Okay,
Growing peppers in the spring or of whatever. That type.
yeah, yeah,
Just think in terms of context for anyway, accessible or anything. Like, why is this thing highlighted? By the way, there should be some indication in accessibility that something is a link. People turning off underlining stuff and making it the same color as the background doesn't help anybody. I know sometimes, underlining is ugly. Well, there's ways of kind of doing it, but still making something clearly a link is pretty important for all users.
great. Thank you, guys.
Got it.
So Nicole has changed her site from Genesis to Cadence. All right, we're gonna have a big reveal here. We're gonna look at that. That's nice. Is there anything in particular, Nicole, you want us to look at, or just admire the page? And
So no, so last time, remember the tab didn't work as you went through my whole menu and everything on the last theme that I had.
Right.
So now I think it works the way that it's supposed to.
So do you want Peter, you might be better off bringing this up. So you're talking about the accessibility test that
Yeah. Yeah, like you
want to
brought
do
up
that,
my
Peter?
site
Yeah.
and it was not good.
Yeah.
Take a look.
How did you find, Nicole, while he's bringing that up, how did you find going from Genesis to Cadence? Was it difficult, or was it, did you pick it up pretty easily?
So I had them do the initial install, so then I just had to go back in and update like images and links and
Okay.
stuff. But I feel like it's similar to Genesis as far as the page building like features. So I didn't feel like it was that difficult to switch.
Yeah, it's probably I think it'll be easier for you to find people who can work on the site too in the future than like Genesis. I think that framework seems like it's a bit these days a little harder to find people who are familiar with it.
Okay.
So your menu. So as you load the page, the one, but there's a reason for it. You have ads, and this is
That's Mediavine.
Yeah, exactly, and that's kind of wanting to have control over that. I was able to close that, but as you tab through when you load the page, and if I hit the right key, so skip to content. Yeah, this is all what Cadence gave you. So you're going in order, and again, this idea of here's your menu, and then the arrow. When you arrow down, now you can do this. You can escape out of it. So now you're giving people the ability to have control over where they are as they're tabbing through things.
Yeah, and I think that my darker pink is okay for accessibility because we had checked that last time and I had updated it.
You got, yeah, you're looking good.
Okay.
You're looking real good.
Okay, good.
But your alerts are nondescript. Yeah, that you can always get alt text. Your structure, H1, H2. So I mean, the one that's hard is when you have stuff like that where everything is sort of like a heading 2 design. But as long as things aren't in order, well, that could be a challenge. A lot of times you get like block plugins that make a bold text a heading when it could just be text that is made bold. But it's certainly not the worst thing in the world, but by far. But
Okay.
looking at your initial score of 0 errors and 0 contrast errors, you should feel real good about that.
Okay, perfect. Because last time it was not great. It was like a good example for you to show what not to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Nice.
thank you so much.
Got it. Thanks. No, thanks for sharing that. And thanks for the success story.
Yes, thank you.
PK says the shop now links are opening in new tabs. Yeah, I think where is that shop now?
Yeah, I didn't try that, but one of the notes that I had while you're doing that, Ray, one of the notes that I had in that is like for plugins. So you've got plugins that help, plugins that absolutely don't help, the overlays, and then it's like, well, any plugin you add if it does something to the user experience on the front end, you just need to check. Again, plugins that give you, really fancy blocks and things like that. You just have to see how do they handle accessibility, like that whole bring in a pattern that has a title and an image and it looks really great. And then you look at it and go, yeah, but they didn't really code it cleanly for accessibility. Just something to be aware of.
Okay, yeah, and so I'm seeing the conversation. So let me just share so other folks see what we're talking about in the chat. Yeah, so this is actually portfolio, right? These are going to individual blog posts.
Yeah, so that technically should be, I think I have to update that because they're going to a new, do you hear me?
Yep.
I think originally there was like that it should go to a new page, and then I learned that it shouldn't go to a new page. So there are still things that like, so that you would say,
this one. I see. When you click on the shop now button, that opens in a different one. Yeah.
So that technically should be, because it's to myself, it should be.
Yeah. Instead of opening it another tab, yeah, it could just stay in this current tab.
Okay, yeah. So I've been like updating things as I go.
Yeah.
So I need to update that page.
Right.
I have a lot of alt text that I have to update too. I just learned that I did something wrong as I go through the process.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. We talked about this before. Even when we talk about like performance tuning the site, you can't do it all immediately. It's just going through, running tests, going through, cleaning, especially if you have a big site or a historic site too. It's just do a piece at a time. So yeah, it's great though. It seems like you cleaned up a lot, right? Since I never looked at the site before.
Thank you.
Love to see the effort. Yeah.
Anyone else have questions or things to bring up, look at? Let's try. I thought I had something too. I forgot. I thought I had a question for you, Peter, but I forgot.
I have a question.
Sure.
I think I had gotten, and I don't see it now, but is there something with iThemes that it's changing either like to a new name or iTheme security?
To solid.
So is that something that I have to put a new plugin in, or do I just keep the old one? It's just gonna change?
Knowing that company, they're going to make it as easy and invisible as possible. I think their whole thing is just making sure that everybody knows that when they see a new name, it's still the same company. So yeah, it's solid WP. So iTheme security, all the iThemes stuff is falling under solid WP. I think it's called SALID, solid.
Did they get bought by somebody? Do you know? I wonder why that changed.
What's that?
Did they get bought by somebody? Do you know?
No. They just, the iThemes brand just didn't work for what they've done. They just, and what they did is what was kind of interesting is a lot of their rebranding was done in public. Sue had to leave. Sue from the Carolinas, but she was actually involved in some of the behind the scenes stuff of that rebranding stuff because she's close to some of the folks involved with that. Yeah.
I used to have their subscription to their training thing a long time ago. I know she said she has that too. It was a really good resource.
And now they have free and paid. In fact, on something today from them. So following the schedules of all the different places, resources for like streaming meetings and stuff that I'm interested in. There's a lot, and then you feel bad when you miss something because it's
can't watch it all. Yeah. Well, I don't see any other hands raised or questions. So thanks, Peter, for testing this out on us. Very good. Hope it goes well.
Yeah, I just know I need to trim it down because I have to add more.
That's what we're here for. This is dress rehearsal.
Yeah.
We ask a lot of questions. It's just chatty group. We always ask a lot of questions. So
yeah.
That's great, though. I hope everyone picked up something. Like I said, the recording, some question about that. Yes, I'll try to post this by end of day tomorrow so you can watch that again. And I definitely, again, highly recommend people either try to attend the Accessibility Day as it's happening or just sign up for it, too. I tend to overextend myself, too, but sign up for these things and you get notified later when they publish recordings. But it's great. It's great attending live, at least, because then you could ask questions of the speakers, too. So So it's coming up next week. Again, good luck, Peter, on that presentation. And thanks everyone again for joining us. And we'll see everyone next month. Take care. Have a good night, everyone.
This was great.
Bye.
Hey,